Honourable Shane Jones.
At 8 o'clock on a Wednesday evening. So I'd like to augment, in a very modest fashion,
becoming of the member, a typically modest fashion,
that which has been offered. So I might wait till the senior member moves, so the wisdom's blinding me at the moment.
You've taken a minute.
Part 3. So I want to direct our attention to section 26. And I want to be confident that, sir, the changes that are contemplated here, although I would remind the current FEC chair in the occupying the seat, I daren't say the throne, sir, I would remind him that when this legislation first went through, that he enjoyed sterling chairmanship under the leadership, sir, of Mr. Jones. And now that I've rejoined the FEC, we look to see if those qualities have continued. Time will tell. But, sir, now I can't imagine you're likely, sir, to rule any of what I'm about to say far of the mark. But there are some substantial changes that the banking sector is facing, not the least of which, sir, is a change to the capital adequacy equation, or dare I say the framework. So when we say here nothing in this Act exempts the corporation or Westpac New Zealand from provisions, etc., I'm presuming, sir, those provisions are enabling the Reserve Bank Act, the Reserve Bank Governor, sir, to introduce changes that ensures that our major banks, especially those of a systemic importance, sir, are able and will be required to fulfil the Basel II capital requirements that have been recently in the newspaper, sir. And basically, sir, what they're requiring is that as we continue to fund the very substantial appetites of the farming sector to continue to grow, sir, that the banks themselves have an adequate amount of capital that they derive from their own inherent sources, sir, and that they're not relying to such an extent on a thin level of capital that when they continue to fund, sir, the more aggressive elements in the farming community who have been, sir, unwisely in my view, stacking up too much debt and running a set of operations, sir, unless it's arrested, and they are brought to accept that there is a fair standard that all contributors to the economy ought to observe in relation to the tax system, but their sort of prodigious appetite for debt, sir, doesn't actually undermine the broader banking sector. Now, sir, recently Mr. Foss, sir, is challenging me to demonstrate, and I'm glad to do it over the next 20 minutes with your forbearance, sir, demonstrate the relevance to, sir, I'm on page 21 in the unlikely event that Mr. Foss, unlike the former Labour member who brought in the 2006 bill, had not read it. But, sir, I'm talking about whether or not they're going to be captured by the provisions that enable the regulator, the Reserve Bank, sir, to impose standards, and I wouldn't like to think, as a consequence of shoddy workmanship, shoddy drafting, perish the thought, sir, that they may not be required to observe the new strictures put in place by the Reserve Bank, because they are there for a purpose, sir. Farm sales, sir, have slowed down, and they've gone through a very low period, and not every single client who's a farmer of Westpac is in Strugglers Gully in terms of their debt-equity ratios, sir, but it's important that as the bank goes forward, it does not worsen that situation. Because, sir, there's a sum of between $45 to $47 billion that has been extended in the form of debt to our agricultural primary produce sector. Not all of it is with dairy farmers, but the vast majority of it is, sir. And in addition to that, not all dairy farmers, as I've said, are facing tragic economic circumstances, but a significant minority are, and the banks, sir, that put them in that situation, I'm sure are going to work very judiciously with them to ensure that they're not tipped over the edge. And I'm sure, sir, that there's no particular provision that requires a bank to act in that fashion, but they've got to accept that they are members of the community and they have a critical role in relation to the provision of credit. So credit that depends inordinately on overseas sources as a consequence, and unfortunately that's going to be worsened tomorrow as a consequence of the blighted view that the current government have about savings, sir. And these things come from Section 26, Mr Chair.
Oh, Honourable Shane Jones.
Oh, thank you, Mr Chair. Mr Chair. So I want to continue in this vein of farming, because as the current Minister of Agriculture knows, the front page of the Dominion, when it's not about us and it's about them, is never wrong. No, never. So there are odd occasions when the front page of the Dominion is unwisely directed on this side of the House, and that's a case, sir, of poor research, personal agendas, feeling beholden, sir, perhaps to some of the corporate backers of the current government. So we can't do much about that. But we know, sir, as a consequence of today, and it is connected actually to the status of the banking sector. It is connected, sir, to the banking sector. Anyway, so I must continue on this vein. However, now we've talked about, sir, whether or not this particular bank, our Westpac bank, that's being fully incorporated now as a consequence of changes that were brought, that originated back in 2000, and as I said, Anne Sherry, former CEO, fought it doggedly. She's since gone on to run, if not the Love Boat, some sort of ocean line of business, etc., sir. But under her, sir, stewardship, this was the last bank that was willing to embrace their obligations, etc. And, sir, they are somewhere between 18 to 20% the size of our commercial banking sector here. They're not the largest, sir. I think that belongs to ANZ in terms of their exposure to the rural sector, but they have a handsome book. Of course, part of that, sir, does contain warts, otherwise known as crepa, soon, no doubt, sir, to be sold overseas as a consequence of more sort of dilatory approaches by the other side of the House. But so we'll learn more about that closer to November the 26th. So, sir, is the bank going to be obliged to continue, sir, along with the other banking sectors, and is it going to be to observe, sir, such capital adequacy ratios that I've earlier referred to? And, sir, what is it going? Well, is it going to be able to, as a consequence of this bill, soon to be enacted bill, sir, to do anything that might worsen the situation with our real estate-based debt? So we have a situation where our Aussie-backed banks, unlike the single sterling example of Labour Party policy, the Kiwi Bank, sort of regularly undermined, sir, by the current Treasurer and his very sort of parsimonious approach to providing adequate amounts of capital for it to slowly grow into flourishing areas of the economy, rare though they may be under the current administration. But, sir, with the household sector debt, what is actually going to happen as a consequence of this bill passing, and can it be affirmed that our Westpac Bank will continue, sir, to play a key role in not only ongoing funding of house owners and young families, etc., wanting to purchase houses, but what about, sir, the provision of credit for business lending? The provision of credit on the basis of the strength of the cash flow that an enterprise is showing, as opposed to small to medium-sized businesses having to rack up more debt against their houses and move that credit, sir, through to actually sustaining their businesses. We'd like to see, sir, something of that nature flow from banks such as this monumental institution, otherwise known as the Westpac Bank, so that, sir, they're providing capital to those who are willing to take a risk, those who are willing to diversify the revenue that the government relies on, those who are willing to deepen, sir, our reach into overseas markets with the provision of innovative services and new goods. But none of that can happen, sir, without banks that are willing to move away from their very comfortable association with lending dough against houses, one after the other. Now, sir, we want to be assured that as a consequence of, and I say Clause 26, Part 3, this enactment, that they'll be able to continue to adopt an attitude, sir, that actually grows that part of the economy which has actually withered over the last 2 or 3 years, in particular the last 2 years, sir. And it's not really as a consequence of the so-called international recession, but it really has come, sir, because of a very drowsy approach taken by the current leadership towards how to revive the economy, how to train people, but more importantly, how to use a time of adversity and turn it into an opportunity to create new sources of wealth, new sources of innovation, and actually boost productivity. Because, sir, from a time of adversity can come inventiveness, can come, sir, resourcefulness, something that is spectacularly absent from the current approach shown to us by the government. Kia ora tātou.
The question is that part 3 stand part. Those of that opinion will say aye. Aye. Contrary, no. The ayes have it. The question now is that clauses 1 and 2 stand part. Honourable David Cunliffe.
Mr Chairman, addressing clauses 1